Welcome, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. I know there might be a few more folks trickling into the call, but my name is Yash Singh. I'm the platform manager for Beacon and US Communities here at DataKind, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to our third and final webinar of our series introducing Beacon from community data to coordinated action. Today's session will be a little bit different than the previous ones if you've been tuning in, but I'll start with what we're going to cover today. So just as a reminder, if you have questions or comments, please drop them in the Q&A section of the Zoom room. You can find that in the bottom panel. We will take some time at the end of this call to go through those questions, either for myself or for one of our presenters, Angela, who will be speaking. And then I'll dig a little bit into some of the challenges that come with working across different sectors and working with data. And then we're going to have Angela, one of our partners from Second Harvest Food Bank of Central Florida, present her ongoing journey with data and collaboration. And then I'll revisit some of the things that Beacon does to enable and kind of promote that form of collaboration and spotlight some of the features that are involved. And lastly, we will end with some questions and answers. So again, feel free to drop that in the chat or in the Q&A. And just as a reminder as well, this will be recorded and sent out to you as well. So if you had colleagues that were not able to join today, or you want to revisit some of the topics discussed, you will be able to find that both in the follow-up email and on our YouTube channel. All right, with that, if you are new or you're not aware what DataKind is a global nonprofit organization that focuses on using data science and AI for positive social impact. We've been spending about 15 years or so partnering with different organizations and building one-to-one solutions with different nonprofits or mission-driven organizations. And Beacon is actually one of the examples of the products that we have built that serve a multitude of different sectors. And it was built specifically with the interest of organizations who are serving communities directly. So if you've been a part of our series, this one might be a little bit different. Session one was really focused around what Beacon is, what its functionality is. I was able to walk you through some of the use cases and functionality that occur on the platform itself. From session two, we heard from one of our partners at the Legal Services of Eastern Missouri how an organization can use Beacon to build data maturity and capacity of their organization, build visualizations, build evidence for that data-driven decision making. In this session, we're going to learn alongside one of our partners at Second Harvest Food Bank of Central Florida and understand their ongoing journey. And so before I hand it over, I want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that occur in cross-sector data in general, as well as in food and in health. So just as a reminder, if you haven't been to our previous webinars, what we have found and what we build towards with Beacon is often that organizations don't struggle because data doesn't exist. They struggle because it lives in different systems. It's used by or published by different organizations and sometimes in different formats. And so the challenge often becomes, how do we create a shared understanding of this data that we can all work around? And so that is especially true within food security and health. A lot of food security and health is foundational to economic mobility. Within the ecosystem of food access and health, there's partnerships across food banks, across health systems, public health, and various nonprofits. And so that those relationships really represent a collaborative environment that needs to be sustained in order for impact to actually be delivered. And so within that as well, there's a need for trust, both in the data and amongst partners, shared metrics, and governance of that data to ensure that there's the right environment before data and technology can actually show up to help. And so with that, rather than hearing us talk about collaboration, we wanted you to hear directly from someone living in it. With that, I'd love to welcome Angela Corona. She is the Health Systems Manager and Health and Hunger Strategy Specialist at Second Harvest Food Bank of Central Florida. Welcome, Angela.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Ash. I'm excited to be here today to talk with you all a little bit about our journey, trying to work towards a data strategy within our Health and Hunger Task Force. It's, as Yash said, this is not going to be kind of a technical overview of how we're using Beacon, the buttons that we're clicking and things like that, but more so about the journey that we've been on kind of starting a data strategy from scratch within our cross-sector collaborative. And I'll preface to say we're not at the finish line yet. I'm hoping that this might be an inspirational kind of overview for those of you who might be thinking about cross-sector data collaboration to see that it is possible. And for those of you that are already further along than we are, my hope is that some of this might be validating for what your experience has been as well. But I think the one thing that you'll hear kind of throughout my sharing today is that Beacon has been a key piece of our journey. And also, it's not the only piece of the puzzle in terms of data sharing and data collaboration. And that was part of the lesson that we've learned along the way. But just to get started, I work with Second Harvest Food Bank, and we are the convener of a cross-sector collaborative called the Health and Hunger Task Force. Health and Hunger Task Force is made up of about 20 organizations, and we work across sectors, right? We've got folks from the healthcare space, folks from food distribution, public health, researchers, and we're all coming together to really work at the intersection of food insecurity and health. We've been working together for about 10 years, and the first 5 years was a lot of just learning, what does healthcare do? What does the food system do? How can we start to work together in some different ways? But the last 5 years have really shifted with thinking about our work more from a systems change lens and from a collective impact framework. And so as we've shifted towards that, data has come up more and more in our conversations. How are we showing that we're working together? How are we using data to more strategically and collaboratively work together across organizations? So when we first met DataKind, they were asking us, hey, we want to help nonprofits solve data problems. What kind of data problems are you guys having? And the two big things for me was, hey, we are working in this cross-sector collaborative, and I need to look at different data points together. Like, I don't just want to look at food insecurity. I want to look at food insecurity and diabetes and heart disease. And I want to be able to look at that at a granular level so we can strategically and collaboratively kind of bring our services to where they're needed the most. We also, as a collaborative, had in the past tried to talk about data sharing. We have a number of organizations within our collaborative that were collecting the same type of information. We had some trainings on that and how they could collect that kind of systematically, but we didn't have a place to put that data where people would be able to see it and engage with it in a meaningful way. And so what was really awesome was that when we spoke with DataKind, they were like, we think we could build something. And that's really kind of the birthplace of where Beacon started. But it was also the start of our data strategy within the Health and Hunger Task Force. Knowing that we were having a tool that was going to be coming, we started to think about, okay, what would it look like for us as a collaborative to have a data strategy as we move forward? And so I'll hit the next button. And so really in the early stages of our journey of getting that tool built and getting a data strategy set into place, trust has been a key piece of that. And when I think about how we've built trust across our collaborative, it's been in a few different ways. Number one, we made sure that people knew that we were working on developing a tool that was going to be the foundation for our data strategy moving forward. And we made sure that the members of our collaborative were part of the development of that tool. DataKind was great because they gave us the opportunity to do user testing. They came to our meetings and they allowed people to share out what they were thinking, what they needed. We did breakout rooms, things like that. And that really helped raise awareness of the collaborative that, hey, we're going to be working on data together, and also got their buy-in from the beginning that this is a tool that we're working on together that we want to be responsive to our needs. Once we had the tool, we really started working on, okay, what is our phased approach for getting data into the system? And I'll say when we talk about trust, we were really able to build on an existing foundation. And an existing foundation of trust was actually part of that. I think sometimes when we're working in communities, we think we're starting a new initiative and we're starting from scratch, right? We're bringing partners together, starting from scratch. But oftentimes we have a history within the communities that we're working in, within the partners that we're engaging within, and certainly within our Health and Hunger Task Force. And so we really had a strengths-based lens as we talked about this with our partners, that we weren't starting from scratch in terms of trust. We knew that we would be doing new things together, that we are going to be doing new things together. So we want to make sure that we are building on and thinking about trust along the way, but knowing that we're building on that existing foundation that we have of working together. I'll also say, in terms of our existing foundation, when we're thinking about our data strategy and how we would use Beacon, our infrastructure of how our collaborative is put together has also been something that we've been able to leverage. We have a general membership within the Health and Hunger Task Force where folks come to our meetings, but we also have working groups. So members can volunteer to be part of a working group where they work on a kind of a time-limited project that supports the work of the task force. And we implemented a steering committee for our Health and Hunger Task Force. So a group of folks who can really provide direction and guidance on where our collaborative is going. And so we were able to really leverage our steering committee and our working groups to make sure that we were getting kind of hands-on engagement from our members, and then also leveraging our general membership meetings to make sure we were bringing folks along with us along the way. When we started our data strategy, I'll say the idea was to start small. Once Beacon was ready to go, I was kind of like, yeah, let's get in there. Let's start sharing data. Let's start putting stuff in. But we did not do that as much as I would have loved to. We actually started by saying, hey, we're not going to ask anybody to put any data, any of their organizational data into Beacon yet. Instead, what we're going to do is identify the population level indicators that we are interested in kind of working on as a group and looking at trends on as a group, and use that as a starting point. It allowed us to really move towards alignment as a group, and it allowed people to get used to the tool itself without asking people to immediately start sharing their data into the system. If you want to go to the next slide, Yash. So that early kind of alignment on what is it that as a collaborative we're going to be focusing on, what are those population level indicators, again, was a great opportunity to build trust and to build engagement across our collaborative. So we engaged a working group to start that process for us. Thankfully, we have a lot of fantastic researchers and PhD type folks who love data, who were able to come alongside. We worked together with them to facilitate some breakout rooms in our regular kind of general member sessions, where we got ideas around what is it that we want to focus on as a task force. Yes, health and hunger, but is that diabetes? Is that heart health? Is that mental well-being? Where is that intersection that we're looking at specifically? And our working group was fantastic at really distilling down people's ideas and bringing it back to the table to say, hey, you said this. We think these are the right indicators. We got additional feedback from our members and kind of honed and got to a final product on what we call population level indicators are. That process was fantastic because we really had to work as a collective to come to consensus. And there was definitely some trade-offs and conversations that we had to have about what are the data points that we want to track specifically. And that's where, when we put our data strategy together, we really identified what are our core values as we're doing this data work together. And two of our core values were learning together and strategizing together, that collaboratively working together to better serve our neighbors. And so one of the trade-offs we had was there was some great data available that we could track in terms of indicators at a county level. And we do have some indicators in our population level data that is county, but we also really wanted to dig in and be able to identify indicators that we could look at on a zip code level or a census tract level. And so that meant maybe we weren't picking indicators that were completely aligned with other coalitions or collaboratives in the community, but that were able to serve our needs, which was we want to get granular. We want to use this mapping tool to be able to say, hey, here's a zip code, here's where we're seeing some needs, and how can we better support? So that was one of the tensions or trade-offs that we had to think about during that time and work together around. And then once we had all of our population level indicators selected, we were finally able to translate those into Beacon. And I say finally because again, like initially you're like, yes, we've got our data tool, but it took several months of work to get to the point where we were actually now utilizing that tool because we had to identify and align on what are the data points that we're trying to look at from at least a population level space. And so we were able to upload those indicators into Beacon. We actually had selected some of the indicators that Beacon already has available at a public viewing point. So that was really helpful. And we created our team, our task force team in Beacon. So folks were able to join in as part of the team and they have access to seeing the data points, the population level indicators that we're working on together. And that was really the first phase of our data work, is aligning on the big picture population indicators that we were working on together. Now, if you go to the next slide, I'll share with you a little bit about where we are at now. In the last 3 months or so, we've moved from population level indicators where we are uploading publicly available data into our Beacon team, and we are engaging with our partners around organization level data. So the ultimate dream here is, yes, can we look at food insecurity overlaid with diabetes together? Yes. But can we also ask organizations to upload their data to show real-time needs? So instead of looking at 2-year-old lagging data, we have partners who are screening for health-related social needs on a regular basis. They're able to see where people are having needs around food or around transportation, but everyone's got their data siloed in their own organization. So we're looking at, hey, can you guys upload your data into Beacon so that we can see that together? We're also looking at not just need data, but service data. So where are organizations doing work? We're not the only food organization, for example, that is part of this collaborative. So yes, we want to upload all of our food pantry locations across our region, but are there other food organizations that could upload their locations so we can all collectively see them? Are there even folks doing nutrition education classes or blood pressure screening points, right? Like, how can we start to say, what are you all doing in the community? And can we put this into Beacon in order to be able to see everything in one place and then strategically collaborate together for better service provision? So in doing that, we're having to build out some data governance for data sharing, and we're keeping the trust process going with this. So we didn't want to build a data sharing agreement or an MOU that was coming from our perspective only. We engaged our general membership back in April. We had an activity where we asked them, hey, what would make you feel comfortable putting your data into Beacon? And what would make you feel comfortable using the data that you had in Beacon? And I'll be honest, a lot of the things that people mentioned weren't necessarily a complete surprise, but it did validate the fact that we need to have strong governance in place. Our collective, I will say, tries to avoid bureaucracy when we can, avoid kind of having extra stuff that we don't need. But what we learned from that meeting specifically was, in this case, people are wanting that. They're wanting to have some processes in place to be able to trust that the data that they're looking at is actually accurate. So that means we have to have a process in place for that. And we need to have commitments in place that folks are going to be uploading data on a regular basis, that this is data that you can rely on. And so that process was really helpful for us as a leadership team, as a steering committee, in order to be able to start going back to the drawing board to now creating those governance processes and those agreements with that feedback from our membership. I'll also mention that in terms of collaborative structure, this is where we're also going to be engaging not just our working group, we do still have our working group engaged, but we're also going to be engaging our steering committee more seriously in the governance piece as well, as a decision maker and an approver of those data sharing agreements and processes. And I'll tell you, this part of the process, what we are learning is, man, governance is complicated. And you may already know that. And I do think, though, when we first walked into this, I thought surely like a good old MOU will be enough to get people kind of engaged in this work. And that may be the case depending on the type of collaborative that you're working with. But what we're finding is we may need to have things like data sharing agreements, data use policies, in addition to an MOU or an MOA. We're looking at, because we work with healthcare, what are the HIPAA and health information considerations that we need to make sure we're accounting for. So it's not just the nonprofits on our collaborative that are able to engage in this space, but also those healthcare institutions, which tend to have so much of that data as well. And so that's absolutely the biggest lesson we're learning. And I think if we could have gone back, started exploring that process a little bit sooner. And I will say we have found some great resources, though, externally to help us start to put some of those pieces into place. So that's where we're at now. Our hope is by the end of this year that we're going to have data in Beacon from our organizations and be able to start collaborating around it. But I think in sharing some of our journey today, I again want to reiterate the point that Beacon has been great in terms of giving us the momentum and a tool to use. But the reminder that Beacon is one piece. If you're building out a data strategy across your collaborative, across sectors, there are so many other pieces to make sure you're considering, and really trust needs to undergird all of that. And so with that, I'll pass it back to Yash to continue on. But thank you so much for the opportunity to share our journey today.
Yeah, thank you, Angela, for sharing and walking us through your journey. I think to your point, it speaks directly to the parts of working with data that we don't often see, that we can't showcase ourselves, being owners of the Beacon tool itself. But I think are very important when thinking about how you grow maturity across different sectors, different partners within a sector itself. And so with that, I would love to pivot a little bit to share with you all how Beacon directly supports and plans on supporting that in the future as well. So for those of you who don't know Beacon already or haven't been to our webinars, Beacon is a place-based data platform for US community data and for coordinated action. We built Beacon specifically for those close to communities, and specifically it was built not with the intention of it being exclusively for data teams. It was designed for people closest to those communities that they serve. And so the couple ways we do that is that we have worked across different types of partnerships to combine over 55 indicators across economic data, health data, housing and transportation data, and demographic data to really give people an early view and be able to add those layers that indicate where you might be willing to focus investment or where areas are of higher vulnerability. And the tool itself is designed to work again for people who might not be non-technical or people who have stepped into a technical role on these teams, because it allows you to upload data, download data, and map the data really without having that level of understanding. That being said, I will be showcasing a little bit how you can get that level of transparency and understand directly where it comes from. And then last but not least, Beacon has always been a tool built for collaboration. We fully understand that it works. People who work within this realm, or people who work with data, you typically don't work on it in a silo, right? You work in a collaborative, cyclical process, and having that trust, having that ability to share evidence once you build an insight is paramount to the ethos of how we build Beacon and how we will continue to build Beacon. All right. With that, I also just want to share, we have been showcasing a couple of different specific use cases across these webinars and even today, but we built it, specific for those organizations who work across and within communities. And so, that includes, but is not limited to community development partners, small business support providers, community-based nonprofits, and cross-sector partnerships that support all of the above. So if your job involves figuring out where need and investment is greatest and how to respond to it, Beacon was designed with you in mind, not just exclusively for data scientists, but for practitioners. And so where does Beacon fit into today's webinar and to what we talked about with earning trust, with aligning partners, and how to govern data responsibly, all which are important steps that surround or even really preface working with data or technology itself. And so I want to share today a little bit about some of the collaborative features in Beacon and where you can gain that early trust with your teammates, where you can start to build collaborative workspaces, and how you can also manage and limit the data that you upload to make sure that you have trust in the platform itself. So there's a couple of places where Beacon, acts as this agent. First and foremost, Beacon operates mostly within teams, right? So when you join Beacon for the first time and you sign up, you will be automatically inserted into a team of your own. You are the sole current team member and the owner of that team. But once you decide it's time for you to move to a place of being collaborative and bringing other people in, we allow you to invite folks to your team or be invited to other teams based on a role access framework, which is of three different roles. Team owner. So this is someone who is an admin, someone who can manage pretty much everything on the team, can manage members within that team itself. Someone you really think of as the steward of that team and the data and assets that you collect. Secondly, you have a contributor. This is someone who collaborates deeply, who uploads data, maybe downloads data, is creating and saving maps, maybe wants to share a map as well too. And then lastly, you have a viewer. So this might be someone who might be tangential to your direct team or maybe within your own team as well, but maybe they're not as involved in actually uploading or visualizing or sharing that data as well. And so you can do this across both saved and now shared maps, actually. And you can also do this across different data layers across different organizations as well. And so without further ado, I wanted to share a little bit how you can build that trust, alignment, and governance within Beacon itself. So to switch over a little bit here, I'm going to take you into the Beacon platform. When you do sign up and you do sign into the page, you will arrive at a home page not too dissimilar from this. Essentially, this is a place for you to understand directly what environment you're working within. Again, I want to highlight and emphasize that Beacon is a team tool, meaning that you have an ability to select between different teams. Maybe you work across health with one committee, maybe you work across food access another committee, maybe economic opportunity across another one. And so this allows you to both segment and minimize the amount of privileges given to your data itself. And so in this scenario here, I've arrived at a particular team. I'm able to quickly view what the saved maps are within our team and also what indicators have been shared or ones that you've created that have not been shared. So this gives you kind of a quick view of that. If you go into your team settings and you are the team owner, which I am for this one, you'll be able to identify a couple of places here. One, you can manage kind of the team name. You can also invite new team members. And this is where, again, you hit those three roles I had talked about in the past. So you have a viewer, someone who can view public data and private data that's been shared with them. Contributor can upload and request data sharing that has to be approved by the team owner. And lastly, the team owner, who is someone who can manage team members, upload data, and share data as well. And then you can invite people. You'll see the status of those invites here. And then lastly, you can also manage people's roles. You can change them as your team evolves to make sure that you are keeping that data as securely, fastened as possible. Lastly, you can create a new team if you want. You can manage your own user profile. But I will actually navigate over a little bit to this shared indicators section. So if you go to this tab in the menu, you'll be able to see the indicators that you have uploaded or your team has uploaded. And you'll notice this column here. So after you go through our upload flow here, which we've demonstrated in the past, you can decide whether or not it's the right opportunity for you to share with your team. Again, just remember that if you upload an asset or save a map or share a map, that all happens within this team environment. So it's critical you understand what environment you're working in first. But once you are ready, you can share and unshare this data. And that'll basically allow other folks to show up to the same page or to the map analysis page and actually be able to add that to their map themselves. The same thing applies to maps as well. Once you save one, it'll be saved to your team and your profile. If you do decide to share that map, you can do so, and folks on your team can start to see the exact result of that data itself, the data analysis. And the last thing I want to emphasize as well too, we've built Beacon for this three-part model that we've demonstrated in which you can start easily with public indicators. You can start to upload your own data to understand where service occurs, and lastly, where you can collaborate. And I think that first step is a really important one to distinguish because the main question we get about this platform is how can we trust the data and how can we trust data security, which I'll get into later. And so across the 55 plus public indicators, there's this data dictionary page where we have identified and annotated exactly what that indicator means, where it's coming from, what type of data you're looking at, the link to the actual raw data set itself. Let's say you have a data team, and even if you want to go so far as to download it yourself, you can understand the source. what year it was published, what year it was collected, and how often it gets updated. And so this gives you very good insight into understanding not just what is the data telling me, but where is the data coming from and how can I trust it, which is paramount to the ethos of how Beacon operates. All right. I'm going to go back to these slides, and I'm going to go to the next slide, actually. So last but not least, again, this is a question I alluded to. We often get asked, how do we trust that we can upload data to our site? Which is a great, great, great question we want to review every time we get a chance. Um, in Beacon, your data stays your own. Basically, DataKind is the tool steward, not the data owner. So when you upload data, immediately it is non-visible to anyone else, but it's only visible to people that you explicitly give access to and defaults to really that owner view first. As far as the data itself and how it gets stored in our system, it is encrypted at rest, meaning that it is uninterpretable unless you have a specific key to retrieve it, which our application does. And last but not least, I did cover this a little bit, but there's three roles in which you can allow access to the data. There's team owners, contributor, and viewer. And that allows you to control and manage exactly which person on your team can access or continue to share that data. Just as a rule of thumb and as a best practice, we always advise you to strip your data of any PII or PHI. If you are already aggregating it, it might not be the case, but if you're adding it, there might be something unknown there. And so we encourage you to review your data before, make sure you work with your partners to understand what data sharing might be, and to try to strip it and minimize it to only what's really needed to upload and what you want to be visualized. And if you have any questions about how to do so, or you have further questions about our, privacy or security policies, feel free to email us, get in touch. We'd love to hear what your use case is. And so last but not least, I just want to remind everyone I feel like this was a very different and special webinar in the sense that it reminded us that data is often the end result and that it starts with coordinated action, it starts with people, it starts with relationships and trust, and that Beacon continues to be designed to build on those ideals, not replace them. And that brings us to our Q&A section. So I would love to hear from you all. Feel free to drop it in the chat or come off of mute. What questions do you have for myself or maybe for Angela, what we have her here as well? Okay. In the meantime, while it's happening, Angela, I do have a question. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, Yash, there is a question in the chat or in the question and answer that I think might be more for you.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
Yeah.
Export static maps as well. Great question. Yes, so if you go to explorebeacon.org, you can get started with a map. To answer your question, it is built for both. If you want to share an interactive map, you can invite someone and they can click around on the exact map. They can even edit and resave it. But there's also a download map button, which will allow you to export the map as a static image, along with the legend and the indicator cards, and on those cards are the source of the year as well. So you can export it and use it quickly as a resource for evidence. Great question.
Yash, what were you saying before that?
Yeah, I was going to ask you a question, Angela. I think you'd covered parts of it, but I think an insight I would like to know, and maybe some participants would like to know as well too, is what has been the most frictional part of this collaborative collective journey thus far?
I think is probably where we're at now. I think just with trying to figure out what are the agreements that we're going to need to be able to get participation from all of our different types of providers. And I wouldn't say it's friction in the sense of like people don't want to do it. It's more so really just trying to make sure people understand what is allowed, what's not allowed. And that just takes time and that takes folks engaging within their individual organizations and coming back together to make those decisions. And so I would say that is probably one of the pieces that has been the hardest. Coming to consensus around our our public indicators, our population level indicators was definitely tricky. But I think our group has a good history of consensus building and working collaboratively in that way. So that really helped us in terms of getting to where we're at today. And can I mention one other thing when you were talking, Gosh, you were talking about the different types of roles within Beacon, and one of the things that has been really key for some of the processes that we're working on building towards for the data sharing is the fact that the owner has to approve data that's been shared. So that's a great process, quality control piece for us. The nice thing is we are going to be, as the backbone organization as part of the collective of the Health and Hunger Task Force, we are going to hold the owner role in terms of our team. And that is one of the ways that we're going to use to control quality is people can definitely be contributors and share information in, but all of that information will get reviewed before it's shared with the broader group, just to make sure that anyone who's uploading anything, it is what we want uploaded and it's quality data. So we're looking at the roles and how we can leverage those to make sure that we're ensuring quality data and building trust along the way too.
I have another question for you, Angela, which I think we get often, but I would love to hear your perspective on it. How do you, working in this collaborative or this collective, how do you instill trust in a platform like Beacon with your partners and collaborators? Like what is the method or the place that you go to further deepen that trust?
Yeah, I definitely think because you all have been such a part of helping build it with us, that was huge. And I know not everybody has that opportunity. But now that we're moving towards using Beacon more often together, we are offering Beacon 101 trainings once a month. That's a new thing for us. And really, it's an opportunity for us to work directly with our partners who want to learn more about Beacon, talk to them about the platform itself, answer some of the questions they have one-on-one or kind of in a smaller group setting, to make sure they understand how the platform works, how it differs from other platforms. We've got folks on all sorts of different technology platforms, and sometimes it can get confusing of, well, what is this versus that, and how do those work together? So we're really hoping that these small group trainings will be really critical for us in terms of making sure people understand the system, know that they can trust the system as well. In the past, we've also done a session around data security that talked about some of what you talked about on that last slide of like who owns the data and things like that. That was really helpful at the stage we were at that point. And that is going to become part of our monthly webinar series where we can make sure that we're reiterating that and that folks know that not only does DataKind not own their data, but we don't own the data as the owner of the team. We want to make sure that folks know that that data is in there, how it's being used, and who has access to it.
All right. Well, with that, I would just like to say thank you all so much for joining today. And thank you, Angela, for coming on to speak with us today. Again, my name is Yash Singh. I'm the platform manager for Beacon and for US communities. If you do have an interest in using Beacon, you can find us at explorebeacon.org. And as well, you can contact us at beacon@datakind.org. We will be sending the recording of the session out shortly after the call. And if you have any colleagues, who want to see it as well, you can share it with them via the YouTube link that we'll be publishing it on. Yes, thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you.